Hi.
Eric, when we spoke to Marco before the India game, he did sort of say he felt quite anxious and nervous, and he was hoping to kind of channel that energy positively. And I guess maybe it didn't work out like he wanted it to. Just what kinds of things was he going through before, and also what kind of work do you do with like a young guy like him who's allowed to have a bad day, going forward?
We've had a morning, everybody. First of all, we've actually had a chat this morning. We have group meetings and then one-on-ones just to touch base on different levels. And I think the real sense about him was that he went away from concentrating on himself to concentrating on the opposition a little bit, which sometimes happens in those pressure moments when you're up against the quality of the batsmen we were playing against. And I think it was a great learning for him. I actually had said to the bowling group, which to their frustration, I think, that I was hoping we'd have some tough situations, and we did. So it was a great learning experience for him as an individual, but for us as a group as well, in a situation like that. But I would probably sum it up as saying that his focus moved a little bit away from the way he'd been bowling to the opposition in the situation. So we'll have to make sure that we get that right. But I mean, it's not that he's capable of bowling what he has done. We obviously have seen it, so it's a case of getting him back there again and making sure that it doesn't happen again and learning from what happened against India.
Yeah, and Eric, I don't know if you guys watched Glenn Maxwell yesterday, but it was something I mean, I've never seen anything like that before. And obviously, you play Australia in the semis. I know you've still got a game to go, but when you look at someone like that, like how do you even plan to bowl at a guy who can basically back on one leg?
I think you've got to use the situation the best you possibly can. I don't think that the tactics that they bowled him were particularly it probably suited him, just the way that he was playing. So I think you've got to assess the situation. One of the things you've always got to control about your tactics and the field placings that you use. So I think our field placings and our tactics would have been different, and that's where we'd focus. But obviously you can't take away from an incredible knock, and I think that's one's going to be spoken about for many, many years.
Thanks, Fidos. Zahir, then Morgan.
How's it, Eric?
How's yeah.
We've seen KG go fairly well at this World Cup. He's eating his straps again. He's bowling nicely. Is there a conversation about him possibly going back to taking the new ball and just setting the tone up front?
I don't think initially in a match. I think what he's doing for us is particularly important. He's the kind of guy, as you say, the way that he's bowling, he can play two roles. If they do get away from us, pull it back the way he did, and if they're under pressure, keep the pressure up. So I think having that experience coming in is in some respects, the business part of that power play in many situations is important. I don't think we're going to get carried away with changes due to a frustration of one particular power play. We've been outstanding in the power play, so I think the role he plays is a good one, and one that's settled in quite nicely. We've spoke from the very start of having a bowling unit that understood their roles, and they've settled into those roles. So we don't want to overanalyze one performance which we weren't as happy with as we have been.
Thanks.
Thanks, Zahir. Morgan, then tennis.
Thanks, Lucy. Morning, Eric.
Hi.
I think you've largely answered what I wanted to hear with Fidoza's question. But as the bowling coach, what would the message be to tell the guys not to panic in a situation where you get an innings like that of Glenn? I don't think there will be another innings like that for a long time. And then it also just probably reinforces that old adage that catches win matches.
Fact of life, that it is the case. We've actually used the opposition a lot this tournament, just to analyse what they've done and what they haven't done, and just from there worked our plan. So it will be a situation where we'll be able to watch not only his knock, but also the way the Australians bowl to Afghanistan at the end of the innings. What can we learn from it? It's often a very fertile place for us to learn, is watch the opposition, see what they've done well, see what they haven't done well. So I think one of the things that we've been quite good at, well, we have been good at this tournament, is have clarity around tactics. That doesn't always guarantee execution or accuracy of execution, but the clarity of tactics is important. And we're always looking for what are the opposition trying to do, and if you can see a plan, sometimes it's executed, sometimes not. That's one thing. But the conversation will be rather what would you do in that situation? What would we do differently? From a tactical perspective, making sound tactical decisions is 100% in your control, and that would certainly where we'd focus.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks, Morgan. Tennis and Telford.
Hi, Eric. Just want to know as well on Shamsi
looked like he did, well, the majority of his balls went down the leg. Have you guys been able to sort of pinpoint technically what went wrong there?
One of the things I do a lot with the bowlers is angle of approach to the wicket. So I believe very strongly in not changing your attack to change your line. So let me use a seamer as example. If you're going to bowl a wide Yorker from straight next to the stumps, you have to change your action. The best thing to do is then to run down the wide line on the bowler side and bowl to the wide line on the batsman side, which makes it the two wide lines become like your off stump, if you like. But what that allows is your action doesn't change. When you're starting to change your action to change your angle, you have a problem. So we've worked quite a lot on angles from his perspective as well. So if he's finding his bowling a little bit too straight and he wants to go wider, to change the angles of approach. And from video footage, we'll study that as much as we can to see if we can correct it rather there than anywhere else. But we wanted to go straight to his degree, but obviously the ball was turning a little bit much and it probably went down leg too many times for our liking, and probably could have been a little more attacking if we'd been hitting off stump a little bit more. But the simple answer is looking at the angle of approach, that the action doesn't change, the trajectory and line of the ball of the attack changes. I hope that makes sense.
That silence, I think, suggests it does make sense.
It doesn't.
No, it does.
It does make sense.
Thanks, Dennis. Talbot, Ben Hines.
Thanks, Lucy. Thanks, Eric.
Hi.
Hi. You mentioned a while ago that you guys study the opponents, and I'm sure your remaining opponents, especially Afghanistan and Australia, those are the ones you know from now, have studied the way India came at South Africa, particularly in the power play. What do you do about that if it happens again?
Yeah, Telford, again, I don't want to give away our sort of thinking at this stage, but we learned an enormous amount about ourselves and obviously Australia, but particularly about ourselves in the series in South Africa when they came as hard as they did at us in that series and what to do. So we do have very specific tactics around what we would do in situations, who we want to bowl to and who we don't want to bowl to, and how we manage that. So we do have a strategy, but I think to obviously talk about it in this situation wouldn't help that much. But we really need to analyze who's coming at us, who's not, what their strike rates are, and how you manage how many balls you bowl at which batsman, and that's really the way we go about it. Field placing, we try and use field placing as much as we possibly can to create pressure as well. Again, we want bowlers to bowl the same balls that we plan to, and then use field placing to create pressure, and certainly those are two very clear focuses for us.
Thanks, Talbot. Heinz Fido seems to.
Eric, a guy like KG actually mentioned that they're not tapping just into your bowling knowledge, but also your overall experience, as a guy who's been to World Cups as well and stuff. Just from your perspective, having been involved in showpiece campaigns, do you believe actually the fact that you guys have qualified early for a semi-final is a help or a hindrance in terms of mindset overall?
Yeah, I do think the game against India was always going to be a big match regardless of whether we qualified or not. Obviously, there'd been a lot more at stake if we hadn't. So I think we were able to get quite a lot out of it. And I think that certainly has been our attitude towards it. The fact the result went the way it didn't was disappointing. But we've learned a lot of lessons about the conditions. So we're very fortunate. We played that match at the semi-final venue, as it certainly looks like it's going to be, and then playing against Afghanistan at what's going to be the venue for the final. So we'll try and gather as much information as we possibly can. But certainly from our side, it's very much a positive, just in terms of what it says about the way we've played, but also the way that we can gather information and then plan for the matches going forward, being Australia and then hopefully the final.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, Heinz. Fidos?
Eric, you mentioned looking at the way that Australia bowled against Afghanistan in the lower order. I think they conceded 64 runs in the last 5, and they themselves said they felt like they really lost it. But if you look at Afghanistan's tempo, it seems like them and the Dutch, they have to bat first and then sort of go quite slowly and kind of like see what happens. So do you sense that's an opportunity to exploit that kind of weaker middle order, if I can put it that way? Or how do you approach a batting lineup like players that isn't very explosive in the beginning?
I think sensing the tempo of a game and when it changes and identifying that moment. So if you can build pressure through the way that they do bat, if they bat slowly and then want to accelerate the back end. But if you can sense that moment, you often get the situation where if they lose a wicket at this point, then you're really in the pound seats. And sensing that moment and when the tempo is going to change and staying one step ahead with your tactics is important in the game senses. The important thing for us is that we do not allow the batsman to dictate our tactics. And we talk about someone like Rashid Khan is what I call a disruptor. The way that he bats is very disrupting, hits the ball in strange areas, and before you know it, you've bowled balls at him. And with respect, so did what's the left spinner's name? From the Dutch, Van der Merwe. He's also disrupt the way that he comes to the wicket and the way that he bats. They disrupt you and they take you off your or they can take you off your game plan. It's important that you don't allow that to. So we saw a situation where the Afghanistan batsmen were dictating the Australians' plans, and as experienced as Cummins and Stark and Hazelwood are, they seem to almost get in their heads and control the way the game and the tempo the game is played. And I think that's something that's very important for a bowling lineup to not allow the batsman to do, and particularly when you know that you're going into the game and these guys are disruptors in the way that they play. So it's an important aspect of us staying true to our tactics and what I call the red mist. When the red mist starts creeping in, people identify it. Conversations that have taken place off the field take place on the field, and that calm heads and calm decisions are made in those moments.
Thanks, Firdous. We're going to go Stu, then Zahir.
Thank you, Lucy. Hi, Eric.
Hi, Stu.
Just on looking at the opposition, India have been tremendous with the ball. Those seamers have been tremendous with the ball throughout this tournament. What can you guys take away from what they're doing that you might want to apply for South Africa in the next couple of games that await you?
The consistency of accuracy. I think we've been really good in the power play as well. I think where they've probably been a little better is the consistency of the accuracy. I think that's been a hallmark of the way that they've bowled, to build pressure and then take wickets. Taking wickets to that phase is important. We've still taken more wickets, but I think their consistency has been really, really good. I still like to see that attack under pressure in the middle overs when they haven't taken wickets, and certainly I think that's a gap that could occur. They haven't been tested at all. I still think that we've come away from the game against India with questions to be answered, discussions to be had, and you might find they've gone away with very few. They probably haven't really questioned the way that they've gone about the game and what they've done and what they haven't done. So that might be a chance for us to be one step ahead of them. But just to answer your question directly, the consistency of the accuracy has been outstanding. Their technical ability, as you can see, the way they get the seams in positions, the way they can move the ball in both directions. We've seen more and more our guys doing it. I think our seams have got better and better during the course of this tournament. We've been able to move the ball in both directions. When you do that, when you do what Marco Jansen has, for example, done, what Lungi's done, it means that batsmen are asking themselves questions about your attack all the time. So you've always got 2 or 3 or 4 balls that batsmen will look at a little longer because they're unsure of which way the ball's going to go and what's going to happen. Now, India's got a bowling attack that's all of them are doing it. So that does put you under pressure. But consistency of the accuracy has been something to really has really stood out.
Thanks, Stu. We're going to take the last couple of questions as we look to wrap up this media opportunity. So we're going to go Zahir, Hines, and then wrap with Telford.
Eric, just back to that very first question. When you spoke to Marco, has this last couple of days been about just putting a shoulder around him and arm around his shoulder at least and saying it's going to be all right? Or is it more, let's look at it from a technical point of view where you actually went wrong and this is how we're going to go?
Well, the first thing is I can't put it all around his shoulder because it's too high. I can't reach, which makes it incredibly difficult. But certainly it's not a technical conversation. I always say there's performance and then there's potential and there's performance. And he's bowled at a certain level, and then you see performance that's a little bit off. And then we talk about, I call it noise in the system. What is the noise between what you perform and the way you have been able to perform, and what have we identified for those? So we've got 4 points that have come out of our conversation that we will focus on to make sure that if he gets under pressure again, that we address those things. Those 4, call them noise in the system. None of them are technical. There's not a technical issue to worry about, I don't think. It's really just got to do with being under pressure in those moments and how we deal with it. So that's what we've spoken about. What noise in the system has created the gap between what he actually bowled and what we know he can bowl. So I suppose in a sense there is support, but I think that's one of the hallmarks of this whole campaign has been the honest conversations around situations we find ourselves in, but none of them have been technical.
Thanks. So here, Heinz has since put his hand down, so we will look to wrap with Telford.
Mark, you were famously unflappable as a player. You always looked in control and calm and whatnot. I'm not sure if that was an illusion, but I wonder, do you have some understanding as a player rather than a coach for what happened to Marco, on Sunday? He just seemed to lose all the discipline that he had. Do you get that as a cricketer?
His answer to the question made complete sense. When you start getting out of your bubble and start worrying about what's on the other side of the pitch rather than what you're doing on your side, that can create it, and the noise of the place like that does add to the occasion. We mustn't forget he's a young cricketer, he's new at the game, and these moments will happen, but he's pretty calm about it, and these things do happen. So it's important that you learn from it as best you possibly can, and I do think we have and we will. So it does happen. You have those moments where, as I call it, red mist can slip in, and when you look back on it, you realize that you weren't calm, you weren't in the moment, you weren't what all those beautiful comments were. But the conversations have been very good and very positive, and I think, as I said, we've got four real points of focus for us to work on, not only building up towards it, but in that situation again in the future.